What We Pretend We Can't See by Gyzym, read by Ella Max Mabella. Epilogue, Part 2. One late September morning, about a month after they got back from their trip, Harry wakes up and feels odd. He takes Tomato for a run, and it helps, a little, the way it does when he jerks awake from a nightmare or finds himself heavy with the desire to bury his face in his pillow and sleep through the day. The run doesn't chase the feeling away completely, though, like it usually does, and he heads home a few minutes early and wakes Draco with a kiss, leaning down over him. Draco mumbles some half-hearted complaints against Harry's mouth about showering and routine disruption, and how unconscionably rude it is to wake someone up for sex, but he sinks his head into Harry's hair anyway, moves obligingly beneath him when Harry crawls back into the bed and presses their body together. "You're disgusting," Draco says drowsily, in between doing his level best to leave a hickey on Harry's neck. "This is foul. You're all sweaty. I haven't even brushed my teeth yet." But he's not so horrified that he doesn't come all over Harry's stomach 10 minutes later, so Harry comes to, and it's good, really good even, but when his body stops shuddering with release, he realizes the feeling he woke up with is still there, discontented, thrumming underneath his skin. He collapses off of Draco and onto his own side of the bed, stares up at the ceiling with his head on the pillow. "I think I'm bored," Harry says. Draco sits up so quickly that Harry worries he might have given himself a whiplash. "With our sex life?" he demands, a strange look on his face. "And this is how you think it's appropriate to go about telling me? I mean, putting aside the level of depravity you must be craving in your soul to be bored after everything we've gotten up to in the brief span of, 3 months? 4, Harry says absently, instead of correcting Draco's misinterpretation of his comment, since he's occupied with squinting at Draco, trying to place his expression, his tone. "Oh, 4? Well, in that case, it's perfectly normal," Draco snaps. There's a thread of hysteria in it, and then Harry figures it out. He looks hurt. He sounds hurt. Although, of course, he's doing his level best to pretend to be anything else. It's at this point that Harry actually processes that Draco is saying he thinks Harry is tired of having sex with him. "Draco!" Harry says, horrified with himself. He reaches up a hand to palm Draco's jaw, and Draco leans out of reach, which is awful. "Hey, Draco, no! Come on, look at me!" When Draco does, Harry widens his eyes, lifts his hand in mock surrender. "Oh, I didn't mean I was bored with with that, it's Harry has never been very good at talking about this sort of thing outside of while he's doing it. But Draco clearly needs him to, and that's Harry's own fault. He averts his eyes, feels his face heating. "That's really good. Still really good, for me, at least." "Good Lord, you unbelievable tool, don't hurt yourself." Draco draws, rolling his eyes, but he looks cautiously pleased as he relaxes and lays back down against his pillow. This time, when Harry reaches for him, Draco doesn't move away. He lets Harry rub a thumb across the scar along his cheekbone and draw him in. Though he does, when they break apart, mumble, "Stop kissing me, Harry. My God, my mouth is gross. Your whole person is gross. This right here, it's gross." "Sorry," Harry whispers, more for causing Draco's earlier distress than anything else, but then Draco, sounding stronger, says, "Oh, for God's sake," and kisses him, so he can't really mean it all that much. "So," Draco says when they break apart again, "you're not bored with our sex life, though thank you for that exciting little early morning heart attack. So you meant existentially bored? Bored with your wardrobe? Me too, if that's it. Oh, Potter, are you perhaps bored with your terrible friends? I'm wholly on board if you want to go out hunting for new ones. What say this time you look for a slightly less earnest and Gryffindor set?" "They're your friends too," Harry says for the 100th time, "and I'm not bored with them. I'm just bored. I don't know." Frowns up at the ceiling. "I just woke up and thought about what I want to do with my day. Well, the middle of it anyway, and realized that nothing I could think of sounded interesting. I think—" He pauses, chews his lips. "I don't miss being in aura or anything, but I still don't have an idea what I want to do now, you know. And I think maybe I need one. I think I might go a little mad if I don't figure it out soon." "Oh," Draco says,
Is that all?
He rolls over to rummage around in a drawer of his nightstand, even as he says,
Honestly, of course you're bored. I'm frankly amazed it's taken you this long to get there, with your freakish action hero complex and everything. You do understand that that's the whole purpose of the list I've been having you dictate to me like a trained monkey, yes?
He pulls his notebook out, flips it open.
It's much easier to determine what kind of career might— Hey, Potter, give that back!
Harry only grabbed the notebook in the first place because he thought Draco intended him to look at it. He holds onto it now, laughing and leaning back over the edge of the bed to keep it out of Draco's grasping reach, because Draco doesn't want him to look at it, which obviously means that he must. Then he actually lays his eyes on the writing, holding the book in front of his face as he hangs upside down, and stops laughing. The list titled Things Harry Enjoys spans 2 pages, though there's drawing on the left page that's taking up a significant amount of space. It appears to depict Harry jumping off a ledge marked The Cliff of Bleak Despair into waters infested with— Harry tilts the notebook a little, staring. Alligators, maybe? Or aquatic cousins of subterranean lizard people, Draco claims, not very convincingly, that he doesn't believe in anymore. It's a gold mine in terms of proof that Draco is well and truly off his nut, but Harry stops looking at the sketch quickly, is distracted by the list itself. It's long and written in a variety of different inks, as though Draco added to it whenever he thought of something with whatever quill was nearby. Some things are circled. Harry doesn't know why, but what stops him in his track is the fact that not everything on the list is the stuff he told Draco he liked. Some of it isn't even stuff that would have any bearing on a potential career. Draco's noted how low he prefers lightning spells when he's got a headache. The pumpkin cake he likes from that bakery in Hogsmeade is pure and enduring love of Treacle-Tart. And some of it is stuff Harry didn't even know that he realizes is true only as he reads it. The phrase, high pressure but low stakes, in the bottom left corner. Draco, Harry says, and finds that this time he has to scrape the word out over a lump in his throat. He sits up and sees that Draco is sitting up too, his knees pulled up to his chest, arms wrapped around them.
Oh, don't,
Draco says brittle. He won't meet Harry's eyes.
I'm perfectly aware that I'm obsessive and insane. I did try to tell you. Anyone with an ounce of sense would know better than to snatch away the private writings of a man who had already disclosed that unpleasant little reality. But I suppose sense is too much to ask of the great Harry Potter.
He sighs an unhappy sound, and his voice is curdled with bitterness when he says,
Go ahead then. I'm prepared. If you could try avoid using the words smothering or overwhelming, I'd really appreciate it.
What? Says Harry. His voice cracks on it, and Draco does look at him then, just for a second. There's so much naked fear on his face that Harry feels it like a punch to the gut, and he wonders, with a hot surge of rage, who in the hell made Draco afraid of himself? How anyone could tell Draco he was smothering and overwhelming and— Well, on consideration, Harry supposes that Draco is those things a little. Demanding, too. Temperamental. Harsh. Harry just doesn't care. No, that's not right either. Harry just likes all that about Draco. Wouldn't trade a bit of it, and can't believe that any idiot ever would have felt otherwise either. But someone obviously did. Maybe more than one someone. And Harry's glad of it for all that it's selfish. It means he gets the chance to be here now. It means he gets the opportunity to value that which some mind-boggling incorrect person did not.
Nobody's ever cared about me like this before,
Harry says, low. The lump in his throat is still there, and so it comes out uneven. A hopelessly pathetic sentence, even without the ruin his voice makes of it, but it's the truth, and Draco deserves to know.
Not that I can remember, at least. Plenty of people have, I'm not trying to say I haven't been lucky in friendships, I have, but—
He looks helplessly back down at the notebook, swallowing hard when he sees Draco's written out the way he takes his tea when his sleep is troubled.
Nothing like this, Draco, never. It's—
Harry takes a deep, steadying breath.
I don't want to tell you off or call you insane or do— well, whatever it is you're afraid of I'm going to do. I don't want to do anything that might make you stop. "Oh," Draco says. His eyes are startled, his cheeks slightly pinked, and Harry thinks for a second that he's going to do what he usually does when Harry surprises him with genuine emotion. To wit, say "oh" in the exact way that he just did, and then walk straight out of the room. Instead, wincing even as it comes out of his mouth, Draco says, "Really?" Harry offers him a smile he can't quite hold in place. It's too heartbreaking, all of it, the incredulity in Draco's voice and the weight of what Harry's admitting. He shrugs one shoulder when the expression falls. Yeah. You're a very stupid man," Draco tells him, so quiet it's nearly a whisper. "As if I didn't try everything to make it stop, Harry. As if I even could." And then he's unmoving, unfolding from his defensive little huddle and pushing Harry back down onto the bed. Draco still hasn't said "I love you," and Harry thinks it's possible that he never will. He's not sure Draco's even said it even to his own mother or to any of his friends. Harry doesn't mind. He himself really hasn't said it since that first time, finding it a lot harder to vocalize when he's not screaming it in a fit of rage. And anyway, he's never cared that much if he heard it or not, in romantic relationships or any other sort. Harry knows what love looks like and what love feels like, learned it from the white spaces in his life where it wasn't. There's always been someone for whom actions meant more than words, and as he twists and writhes under Draco's capable hands, his sinfully talented mouth, he knows, as sure as he's ever known anything, that Draco loves him. Knows it entire, into his very bones. "Jesus!" Harry pants, body arcing off the mattress as much from the warmth in Draco's cool grey eyes, the little absently stroking circles of his hand on Harry's thigh, as from the sensation of his cock hitting the back of Draco's throat. Comes hard and quickly, an unintelligible little shout escaping from his half-opened mouth, and stumbles into the bathroom after Draco when Draco pokes and prods him out of bed. They shower, and Harry jacks off Draco slow and reverent under the spray, his face hidden in the safe expanse of Draco's neck. He doesn't know what he feels, except good, wanted, home. So until after Draco's put up a sign saying the museum will be opening late, until Harry's made breakfast and brought it up to the sitting room for a delayed version of their morning routine, that they actually get back around to talking about why Draco pulled out the list in the first place. "So, as I intended to explain before we got distracted," Draco says, tapping the cover of the notebook and then flushing, just slightly, at whatever he sees on Harry's face. "For the love of God, would you stop that? Sanctuary Potter, honestly. Anyway, I only wanted to tell you that the items I circled, well..." He smiles, and the barest hint of anxiety in his expression fades when Harry smiles back. "I think I may have an idea." It's a good idea. That very afternoon, Harry apparates almost at random to the neighborhood a few blocks from Diagon Alley, where his apartment has sat empty for months. Nearly buys the first space he finds that's open, but it feels a little cold to him, without character, and anyway, Tomato doesn't like it and won't go more than a few feet inside. Harry comes even closer to buying the second place he sees, but he decides at last second to run it by Draco, just in case. It's not, after all, like he has a great track record, real estate decision-wise. "I knew you were off doing something like this, you reckless imbecile," Draco says, exacerbated but fond, when he's replied to Harry's surreptitiously cast Patronus by just apparating into the middle of the room and scaring the Muggle realtor half to death. They've got her sitting on a bench outside, shaking off the effects of an obliviate while they look around. "You took a funny turn," Draco said firmly, thrusting what Harry was amused to note was a packet of his own favourite biscuits at her. "Absolutely nothing strange happened at all. You just sit here and eat your biscuits and think about how perfectly normal this whole encounter has been." And she's been out there quietly nibbling at them ever since. "Right," Harry says, rolling his eyes. "You break the statute of secrecy and I'm the reckless one." "You are?" Draco exclaims. "You were going to buy this place, which is, let's be clear, just exactly as horrible as that hideous rat hole you call an apartment. Don't think I haven't noticed. That's around here somewhere, by the way. You really are a creature of habit. It's terribly dull." Harry, not even remotely fazed at being called a dull creature of habit by a man who has specific pairs of socks for each day of the week, shrugs. "Yeah, well, I like the location, you know. The Glen's just around the corner, which is nice, and it's close enough to Diagon to make sense as a visiting destination, but Muggles can find it too, and I know the space isn't great. That might be the understatement of the century, Draco says, looking around with distaste. It's not that Harry doesn't see what he means. The place is spacious, but clearly the worse for years of neglect. There's a patina of dust and grime over everything, suggesting of termite damage, and an unsettling wheezing sort of sound that starts up whenever the heating system kicks on. None of the electric lights work, and there's a faint smell carrying the suggestion of death underneath everything. Tomato's been sniffing around, tail wagging since they walked in, probably looking for its source, but I was thinking maybe I could fix it up, Harry admits, rubbing the back of his neck with one hand. I mean, the heating and lighting is obviously buggered, but I'll be replacing most of that with spellwork anyway, right? And I'll need appliances, but this way I can choose my own instead of having customized whatever's already built in. The floors, well, they're kind of a mess, but I know a lot of those restoration spells now, and I think they might be pretty incredible underneath all the damage. A couple of coats of paints and maybe a fireplace in the far corner for flu traffic. He stops because Draco's giving him a look he can't interpret. What? Draco cocks his head to the side and looks for a moment as though he's trying to determine what to say. Harry's expecting a barrage of insult to his decision-making skills and business savvy, though he's surprised when Draco says, I'm limiting. Entertained in spite of himself, Harry plays along. Limiting what exactly? The beautiful space you could have had, Draco says, shaking his head and pasting on a huge, mocking frown that looks nothing like the twisted little one he pulls out when he's really upset. The beautiful month we could have had, not breaking our backs trying to make this one vaguely passable. They were going to be beautiful, Harry, and they're lost to us since it's obvious you're already attached to this nightmare. Harry grins at him, not even bothering to glance around at the realtor as she comes back inside. You don't think I'm crazy? Oh, I do, Draco says. I always have. Ask anyone who knew me in school, they'll tell you. That Potter chap, what a maniac, I said time and again, to whomever would listen. They never seemed to recognize my genius, of course, but that didn't make it less true. The edges of his mouth curl into a small, slightly sardonic smile. But I imagine that I understand better than most the desire to take something that has been left an unholy mess and do the work to make it your own. Are you talking about me or Grimmauld Place? Harry asks, raising his eyebrows. It's a silly question, one he means flippantly, that he mostly just asks to tease Draco a little, but Draco flushes and looks away. Oh, he says to the floor, whichever you like. Solid month of work, but the Hollow opens in December, just in time for the holidays. I was right about the floors. They turn out beautifully, a deep, gorgeous cherry, even if there is a set of paw prints running down the center of the dining room where Tomato dashed across the floor before Harry could finish setting a varnishing spell. Even likes that, the easy imperfection of it, though Draco despairs and carries on every time he looks at it, and makes the place feel lived and Harry's. The rest he sort of built around the floors, mostly figuring it out as he went, taking Draco's opinion on some things and ignoring it on others. What's resulted is a place so wholly and profoundly attuned, to him so deeply and inexplicably correct, that he stops in the doorway and takes a deep breath, just enjoying it, in every time he walks inside. The dining area, a long curved room that wraps around most of the little building, is a warm ochre colour. It's furnished mostly with wide wooden tables and chairs Harry actually had commissioned because he couldn't find what he was looking for. I have a chair, Guy Potter, relax, Draco said, like this was perfectly normal. And didn't everyone? There's a grouping of leather armchairs tucked into the corner by the fireplace too, gathering space in lieu of a bar hidden behind a charmed screen so any muggles who visit won't notice people coming out of the flue. And Harry's kitchen. Its spacious burgundy walls, with wide accents, filled even when there's no one else around, with a soft hum of appliances Harry selected himself. All of them magical, and most of them old as dirt, but all as cheerful, functional as if they were crafted yesterday. There's a thick magnetized bar over his favorite stove,
where all his knives can hang, and racks hanging down from the ceiling for his pots and pans, and a whole separate range for the rest of his stuff, so he can have a little room to maneuver, an area all his own. It's mostly a restaurant. That's what Harry says usually when people ask what he's doing these days. I run a restaurant. Or, if Draco catches this in Albocin, I own and run a restaurant. That's true, more or less. A little bit, though, it's also a gathering place. A way station, a soup kitchen, a trading post. People get a hot meal no matter what they're doing there. They pay if they can and don't if they can't, and when he comes across someone who needs a place to sleep for the night, Harry gives them the keys to his old apartment, which he let Draco fix up to help him contain his urges to make all of Harry's decision about the Hollow for him. He also paid the fees and sat through the 2-hour seminar to have his flu connected as an international grade, figuring it would be interesting and exciting meeting whoever came through. Certainly been right so far. He has amazing, bizarre conversation with his visitors, witches and wizards, who hop in and out of grades all over the globe, most of whom don't so much as recognize him, but seem to like the food he cooks. And they have the oddest conversations with each other, not to mention with the muggles who come in sometimes, which Harry catches snatches of as he works and carries with him afterwards, laughing again at someone's joke hours after he's gone home for the night. His friends come too, in big groups at first, but eventually individually, dropping by for a meal whenever they find they have a moment. Harry sends Neville a bacon sandwich every Wednesday after his weekly client meeting up the road, and he thinks he might see Ron more now than he did even when they were partners, since Ron takes an hour at lunch pretty much every day to flop across one of Harry's tables and moan to whoever will listen about the trials and tribulations of baby Hugo. The rest of the Weasleys are regular visitors, as are Teddy and Andromeda, and Blaise all but sets up camp as his fireplace, using the little collection of armchairs to hold God knows what kind of meetings. Even Pansy drops by sometimes. And of course, excepting those occasions when he's got his own plans, Draco's there every night at 7, tucked into the corner next to Harry's range or sitting at a little table right next to the serving window, eating and talking to Harry over the spill of noise from the dinner rush. They are the only ones that know about the core they buried under the center of the floorboards. The knife that spent an afternoon inside of Harry, which Draco, the creepily foresighted little git, saved in case they ever wanted to do something like that, since blood magic was powerful and the damage had already been done. They spent hours practicing the spells at Grimmauld Place before they cast them, talking through their complexities and patterns, and in the end put a little of both their magics into the knife, bound with an oath Rita freely offered to give, but refused to teach them for themselves. They won't know for years yet if it's worked, but sometimes Harry catches Draco's eye and would swear he could feel it too. The gentle undulation of personality slipping into these walls, making something where nothing once was. It's ridiculous. It's incredible. Harry loves it.
It's a year today, you know,
Draco comments offhand over breakfast one Saturday morning in February. He doesn't even look away from the prophet as he says it. Harry panics a little.
No, sometimes in, April, right? Tell me you don't actually expect me to know this.
Draco flips down the corner of his newspaper to lift a scathing eyebrow.
For the love of God, Harry, I meant since the first break-in, not since all of this.
He waves a hand between them, a graceful, encompassing little gesture.
Happened, you nitwit.
He adds, sounding pleased about it.
As if I'd expect you to remember something like that. Sometimes I think it's a wonder you remember your own name. So, it's a thoughtful mnemonic technique, then?
Harry asks, laying the earnestness on thick.
The way you're constantly squawking, Potter. Potter!
Draco squawks, and promptly looks so abruptly mutinously furious about it that Harry cracks up laughing, carries the Merce with him all the way to work. It's a good day. Towards the end of the lunch rush, he leaves his staff with the restaurant and takes Hermione some food at her office, where she's been more or less ensconced since returning from maternity leave a week ago. They chat and Hermione nearly weeps at the chance for some adult conversation that isn't about A, the baby, B, work, or C, the baby, and Harry kind of can't believe, sitting across from her, that he ever worried for a second that he would lose her and Ron in the slow slide of old friendship neglected. It feels silly, impossible now, and he almost tells her as much, but, well, it's probably kinder, he thinks, to spare her the knowledge that he ever thought it could happen. It would probably hurt her more to know there's no reason for Harry to put that on her when it doesn't really matter anymore. On his way out of the ministry, he catches sight of a gelato shop down the road, stopping dead in the middle of the sidewalk to stare at it. Oh yeah, he thinks, remembering the way he used to have to bribe himself with the thought of a cup just to get through his shift. For a second, he can almost see that version of himself, superimposed in sketchy lines over the reality of the day. His hunched posture and bent head radiating misery, discontent. Harry wants to apologize to him, to tell him it can be different, to grab him by the shoulders and point him towards a place, the unlikely path that turned out to wait within. Of course, then he blinks and the moment's gone, leaving him feeling stunned and slightly stupid in the center of the sidewalk. He goes back to work. He makes gelato to serve as dessert with dinner, a rich raspberry one, ribboned through with chocolate, and smiles down at his hands while he works, glad to be where he is. Reveling in it, just a little. Draco and Andromeda and Teddy all tumble in at 5, their faces windswept, ice skates thrown over their shoulders. That was weird at first, the Draco and Andromeda and Teddy thing. Harry didn't even know to worry it would be until the first time he brought Draco to a Weasley dinner at which Teddy and Andromeda happened to show up, a month or so after they started really seeing each other. "She's my aunt," Draco hissed, having gasped at the sight of them, ducked behind a chair before they could see him, and dragged Harry into a bathroom in a crouch walk in full view of about 6 Weasleys. Harry wasn't that fussed about it. It's not like it was even the weirdest thing the Weasleys had seen him to. "And I've never really even met her. You understand that alone, the strangeness of it, and the child, Potter. My God, do you honestly not recognize that I had an obligation to him, an obligation which I neglected, due to the grudges of previous generations? Well, and yes, all right, the insurmountable social awkwardness of penning a letter that said, 'Dear Aunt Andromeda, my mother banned your name from our home when I was a child. Sometimes I think she lives in France to avoid confronting you, and I feel incredibly guilty even writing you this note, but nevertheless.'" He stopped, glad at Harry. "The letter is not the point, Potter." Said Harry, blinking at him. "Who said that it was?" "He'll hate me," Draco said, ignoring this, though he didn't lessen his glare one iota. "They both will. How could he not warn me they might be here? I could have, I don't know. I don't know what you'd do in this situation. That's why I've never done anything about it." "Well," said Harry carefully, aware now that they were treading in not entirely rational waters, "you could just maybe try to talk to them." "Oh, helpful," Draco snapped. "Talk to them? How unutterably brilliant. Never would have bloody occurred to me, you." "Look, Draco," Harry said, cutting off a barrage of insult on the theory that neither of them really believed he meant them anymore. "Andromeda's a softer touch than she looks, especially if Teddy likes you. And Teddy's 8, okay? He likes pretty much everyone. All you've got to do is compliment his new light-up trainers and you'll be his best friend, I swear." Draco did not look convinced in the slightest. "Oh, please, that's a terrible plan. What if I say, 'I like your trainers, Teddy,' and he says, 'I don't care, I reject your compliment due to 8 years of neglect attention. Be gone from my sight, you black-hearted rogue. What do I do then?'" Harry didn't mean to, but he laughed a little, trying and failing to hide it behind a cough. "Sorry, I am, but—" "What the fuck kind of 8-year-old would say that to? Anyone? I would have," Draco muttered, crossing his arms. "Oh, sure," Harry said, rolling his eyes, "because you were such a normal 8-year-old. All other 8-year-old behaviors should be judged against yours. That makes perfect sense." Draco narrowed his eyes, arms still crossed. "You didn't know me when I was 8, Potter. I could have been perfectly normal child in every way." "Yes, but," Harry said, quite sure of the answer already, "you weren't, were you?" "No," Draco admitted in a full-on little sigh. "Of course not. That was the winter I read 17 books about pirates and then broke into a fundraiser my father was hosting. On my head, a pair of my mother's pantyhose. On my feet, broomsticks, because I felt I could rather improve upon the concept of peg leg. I attempted, if I recall correctly, to liberate the entire dessert cart. That I ended up wearing it goes without saying, I suppose."
A black-hearted rogue, huh? Harry said, only laughing on it a little. It's always oddly endearing hearing these stories that explain but don't excuse the pernicious, horrible, incessant little bastard Draco had been when they were children. In some ways, he was just doing his best to hide unmatchable strangeness under a pile of nastiness and bluster. Yes, well, Draco said, but he smiled a little, losing some of the haunted look he was wearing when he dragged Harry into the bathroom. Who wants to be the hero after all? Dreadfully boring heroes. Always prattling on about the right thing and their great and terrible burdens and how their duty to society is more important than eating or sleeping or even the most basic of hygiene. You know, I don't find this funny, said Harry, who actually did, a little, but wasn't planning on admitting it any time soon. Oh yes, Draco said, grinning properly now. This is for me, Potter. Who cares what you think? I think you're an ass, Harry said, but he kissed the side of Draco's mouth as he walked past him. Anyway, opened the bathroom door. If you're not out in 10 minutes, I'm telling everyone you're hiding in here like a chicken. I'm not 8 years old now, you know, Draco drawled, raising his eyebrows. Surely you don't imagine that's going to work. Harry shrugged one shoulder. We'll see. 9 minutes and 30 seconds later, Draco emerged from the bathroom, gave Harry a truly filthy look, and marched up to Teddy. Hello there, I'm Draco. I like your shoes? They are the best shoes. Teddy agreed before he grinned, stomped his foot on the ground to set off lights, and changed his hair along with them to match. They can do like I do, look! That, Draco says, eyes widening, might be the coolest thing I've ever seen. And within 10 minutes they were running around the first floor of the house, wrapped up in a game of pirates versus robbers, which they seemed to be inventing as they went along. He's odd, isn't he? Andromeda said, stepping up next to Harry, who was leaning against the door frame watching them. Always thought Narcissa could do with it a little more odd myself. Harry looked at her sidelong. He wasn't entirely sure what he was supposed to say to that, so he shrugged. Oh, I like him. So does Teddy, Andromeda said, nodding over to where her grandson's hair was turning steadily blonder, and Harry smiled. It's worked out well since then. Teddy likes the museum, follows Draco around, hounding him with questions, and it makes Harry ache for Remus, the teacher Teddy should have gotten. But that's nice, almost, in this weird way Harry's not sure how to explain. It eases something in him, he thinks, even though it hurts. Maybe because it hurts. Harry doesn't really know. In any case, it passes a lot of afternoons, and so do walks in Diagon and day trips through Harry's international flu, and the random visits to odd little festivals Draco insisted they make now and again, usually on no more than a few hours' notice. Harry still takes Teddy to the park alone sometimes, or well, with Tomato now, and they run around like they used to, shrieking and laughing and throwing a ball, but sometimes Draco comes. And sometimes on days like this one, Draco and Andromeda take Teddy out to do something that Harry wouldn't be caught dead doing. I'll see you on skates one day, Potter, Draco promised ominously the night before. Harry can do what he likes without feeling guilty that he's, whatever, depriving Teddy of important childhood experiences due to his inadequacies as a godfather or something. How was it? Harry asked as they all start shedding coats and hats and scarves onto the tops of various tables. Did you have fun? Teddy beams at him. Yeah, I only fell once and I did the whole loop frontwards a bunch of times, and Draco taught me how to do backwards a little. Well, he pulled me mostly, but it was still cool, but I felt, Teddy pauses and looks at Draco, who nods encouragingly at him. Teddy bites his lip. Well, Draco, I didn't feel like Uncle Harry abandoned me. Lying is wrong. I swear, 4 blocks of rehearsal and you bring up your morality objection now, Draco says, though he ruffles Teddy's hair as he says it, and Teddy grins. Very well, you are excused from participating. Potter, the jig, as they say, is up. Only Andromeda and I felt cruelly abandoned by your refusal to be reasonable and come skating. Though that alone is reason enough you have to come next time. I'd say don't drag me into this, Andromeda says, helping Teddy off with one of his gloves. But hey, what a hair, right? Grandma, you said a swear, Teddy breathed, delighted. Andromeda winces down at him, looking hard. Oh, just follow my face, Harry said to Draco, leaving Andromeda to the unfortunate task of distracting Teddy from her vocabulary choices. probably a bunch of times. I know, Draco says. It would be so funny. Don't you want me to be happy? You're twisted and horrible, Harry says, rolling his eyes. Yes, Draco says, grinning at him. The little shit already knows that he's won. But you want me to be happy, don't you? God help me. Harry agrees, cheerfully enough, and retreats to the safety of his kitchen before Draco can do something truly terrible with his little victory, like secure promise towards future ice skating and writing. He hums while he works, because tonight is the Gryffindor pub night. It's still pretty weird looking forward to it. Harry doesn't look forward to the part at the boat truckle, of course. He hasn't actually attended that bit for a few months, because as it turns out, even with someone to talk to, he hates a crowded bar, and he and Draco always end up leaving early anyway. But in November, when Harry was getting ready to open the Hollow, Hermione suggested they do a test run with friends and family, and Draco immediately insisted that they do it directly before the piss-up. It just makes sense, he argued when Harry raised his eyebrows. People should put down a base before they drink like that, and anyway, we know they're all available that night. Besides, we're adults, aren't we? It's hardly civilized at our advanced age to go out drinking without first sitting down to a meal. We are 26, Draco, Hermione said. Advanced age is a stretch and not appreciated one. But I do think that's a good idea. Harry, what do you think? Harry thought Draco was up to something, but he said, sure. Anyway, because it actually sounded kind of nice. And it was. It is. Done it every month since. This is their 4th, and Harry's already grown comfortable with it, developed certain habits and routines. Close up the restaurant at 6, pays whoever on his kitchen staff, volunteers to stick around and help, and then cooks, whatever he feels like. Whatever he thinks his friend might like. That's actually the best part, however much he does also love getting to see his nearest and dearest in an environment less awful than the boat truckle. There's something centering, grounding for Harry in the act of putting together a meal, and it's weirdly easier afterwards to socialize with everyone all at once. Draco says it's because his real destiny in life was to be a hermit and fate got confused, but Draco's always saying stuff like that. He also says it doesn't matter why something makes someone happy, so long as it does. Harry thinks that part's probably right. Tonight the first guest arrives at 6:15. Harry steps out of the kitchen to greet them, but it's Blaise because of course it is, he says. Harry, Draco, Andromeda, Tedward, and breezes right past all of them to the flue grate, where he promptly sticks his head in the fire.
My name is not Tedward,
shouts Teddy, who has had this exact fight with Blaise easily 12 times.
It's Teddy Remus Lupin.
You're only encouraging him, Draco says in a carrying undertone. What you have to do, you see, is pretend like it doesn't bother you. Well, that sounds healthy, Ron says, walking in with Rose under one arm, Hugo tucked against his chest in one of those baby sling things Harry himself can never quite figure out. Teddy, what's he telling you to pretend it doesn't bother you?
Blaise called me Tedward again,
Teddy said sullenly.
My name is not Tedward. He knows it's not.
Oh, says Ron. He hands Rose to Harry, ignoring Harry's raised eyebrow. Well, you can't take that, can you? Got to think of a name to call him back, that's what I say. What a sage parenting move, Ron, Andromeda says. Do remind me to return the favour in a few years, won't you? Ron laughs, but he pales a bit. Harry gives him a wincing little nod of greeting, passes Rose off to Draco, and goes back to his kitchen where everything is, if not calm, at least always under control. He waves and shouts hellos through the long white serving window as more guests arrive. Molly and Arthur, Ginny and Neville, George and Angelina, Bill and Fleur and Victoire. That's one of the nice things about these nights, because they're not starting off at a bar anymore. Everyone can come, not just whoever could find a babysitter or, in the case of Molly and Arthur, the energy and will to spend an evening in a pub with a bunch of wasted 20-somethings. Percy and Penelope show up next, and then Hermione and Seamus and Dean, and then Blaise pulls his head from the fire and actually joins the party. Harry's just put down his whisk and come to say a proper hello to everyone when Pansy walks through the door. She's holding hands. With Luna? Oh my god, what? Draco says, striding over to them. Harry, who recognizes that tone of voice as well as that purposeful gait, follows him pretty sharpish, and so sees him raise a hand and point an accusatory finger at Pansy. What? You never said not a word, not a peep. How long have you kept this from me?
Harry thinks it says a lot about how used to the Slytherin and their lives the Weasley have gotten that no one really bats an eyelash at this behavior. The only person who reacts at all is Blaise, who reaches for some bread, and even that is only because Harry didn't think to put out popcorn.
Actually,
Luna says, smiling at Pansy,
we met almost exactly a year ago. At that one pub night, you remember, Harry? Of course, it was all under rather false pretenses, but it all worked out in the end.
A year ago? Draco says, voice cracking. Pansy, an entire year?
Well,
Pansy says, wincing slightly.
the thing about that is...
Wait, Harry says, casting his mind back. Last time he remembers seeing Luna hook up with someone at a pub night. Pansy, you were that girl, V, with the pink hair.
Are you kidding me?
Draco says, all in one breath.
Potter knows more about this than me, Pansy. Potter! Him!
We live together, Harry says mildly, solely for the entertaining reward of Draco's skull. Draco does not disappoint.
You would be better off remaining silent, you wretched imbecile. The girl with the pink hair. Honestly, I can't believe you never said.
What was I supposed to do?
Harry says, eyebrows climbing.
List off for you every person I'd ever encountered in my life who wasn't like one of my close friends?
A true partner,
Draco says, with a pained little sniff,
would have been willing to make that sacrifice, yes.
You are mental,
Harry says, a little fonder than he really means to.
How was I supposed to know it was Pansy anyways? I mean, why would I look for Pansy at a Gryffindor piss-up? It was weird enough running into Blaise.
There's the point,
Draco says, turning his narrow-eyed stare on Blaise, who just pauses with a slice of bread halfway to his mouth and offers Draco a Cheshire cat smile. Draco huffs out a little noise of irritation and then rounds on Pansy again, who at least has the good grace to look a bit caught.
What were you both doing there that night, Pansy? I never did believe Blaise's. I was just a little afraid he might kill you, Routine.
Hey, Harry says to Blaise. Blaise rolls his eyes.
Please, I am, of course, being misquoted. Draco, I said I was a little afraid that you might kill him.
Makes a lot more sense, says Harry, grinning.
You hush,
Draco says. He takes a half step backwards into Harry's space without looking around, even as he says,
Go cook something, isn't that your job?
I work alone anyway,
Pansy snaps, pulling the tension back to her.
I didn't even know Blaise was there that night. I got a little distracted.
By me,
Luna says, and waves the hand that isn't holding Pansy's a little.
And then the polyjuice wore off right in the middle of.
You know, my darling, maybe we don't tell that story.
Pansy says quickly, though it's too late. Draco's face is rapidly turning purple, and Blaise looks about half a second from breaking down in a fit of hysterics.
Well, look, it's your own fault anyway. Draco, I only went that night because, Blaise said Potter was assigned to your case, and I remembered what you were like in school, and I figured I had one shot to prevent the worst possible outcome.
Yes, well, as much as I'm enjoying all these jokes about the two of us murdering each other, Draco says, and takes one more subtle step backwards, so his back is just barely touching Harry's chest.
Thankfully, the worst possible outcome did not come to pass, so...
Oh, no, it's happened, Pansy says grimly, shaking her head. I'm looking at it, really. I blame myself. The conversation gets a bit shouty and vicious for Harry's taste at that point, and he offers Luna a quick congratulatory smile and squeezes Draco on the shoulder in solidarity before promptly abandoning him for the kitchen. Arthur and Teddy come back with him. Arthur to look at the appliances, and Teddy to lure Tomato out of his dog bed by the back door and into the dining room, and are soon replaced with various other Weasleys, Neville and eventually Draco.
A piece has been broken,
he says, crossing his arms and leaning against the door frame the way he can't when they're actually open and serving food, and so he does constantly the rest of the time.
You needn't hide in here any longer. Hostilities have ceased.
I wasn't hiding, Harry mutters.
Oh no, of course not. Not you.
Draco agrees, smiling slightly.
The great Harry Potter hides from nothing. You were merrily avoiding, not engaging, filling your time with the more important things than shouting.
Can we just skip ahead to the part of this conversation where you say, whatever you have to tell yourself to sleep at night?
Harry asks, though he's smiling a little too.
You know, for efficiency's sake.
Lunatic, Draco says warm. This all looks done. Come talk to our guests, have a cocktail, be a person.
Fine, Harry says.
He throws a last dash of sea salt into one of his pots and then allows himself to be dragged out into the dining room. It's a good night. Harry ends up sitting next to Ginny, who tells him excitedly about her new placement with the Quidditch team in Leeds, and George, who Harry strongly suspects of putting some sort of inflating spell on his chair cushion. Draco's way down at the other end of the table, chattering eagerly in a way that can spell nothing good for Harry with Molly Weasley, but they catch each other's eyes a few times over the noise of everything, eating, drinking, enjoying the company. Harry smiles and Draco smirks, and Harry thinks he's glad, actually, for the 7 long, slow years that led to this wild one. Harry thinks that they were worth it, if this is the reward. Of course he thinks that before Charlie comes through the flue in the middle of dessert, looks directly at Blaise and says, "Sorry, babes, am I late?" And then, an ensuing barrage of question reveals that they have been dating for 5 years. The hollow descends into chaos. Pansy is screaming at Blaise about knowing she was coming with Luna tonight. Now he has stolen her thunder. Bill is screaming at Charlie about breaking the bonds of brotherhood. Draco is screaming at Pansy about how the important thing is 5 years of secrecy, and George is screaming at Bill about how he's not screaming at Charlie loudly enough. Ron and Hermione are screaming at each other, for sport. Harry's seen them do it before. They like to have perfectly normal conversations at the top of their voices in the middle of family fights because they think it's funny, and Teddy is scream-singing his favorite song, which is about a mischievous cabbage, if Harry's remembering right. And above them all, like an avenging angel, is Molly Weasley, bellowing to Charlie about trust and honesty and lies of omission at a volume anyone would find a little terrifying. Harry sips his drink and mourns for his kitchen, where he could go hide out, that is, tactfully avoid all this fuss, if only they weren't already finished the last course of the meal. Still, when Arthur Weasley sidles up next to him and says, "Ah, family," Harry can't help but agree with this weird rush of mingled emotions. Surprise, exacerbation, exhaustion, gratitude most of all. Eventually, Charlton says, "Merlin, Mom, then we used to drink at these things, probably drink, and we got to do that now."
"I'm coming," Molly says quickly. "I'm coming to this bar, and to any other place you might go, Charlie Weasley. You'll not get out of this just by running off. Harry dear, thank you for a lovely evening."
Harry says, "Sure, Molly." He says goodbye to everyone else as they gather their coats and bags, all of them thanking him, but most of them also arguing with each other, and grabs Draco's arm as he passes Harry and stalking off for one more go at Blaise. In a low voice he says, "Please tell me we don't have to go to the bar." Draco's face, which was stormy and creased when Harry grabbed him, clears, tilts his head at Harry, hair falling in his eyes, and smiles. "No, Harry, we don't have to go to the bar." "Thank Merlin," Harry says, and is surprised when Draco kisses him, just for a moment, but with real feeling, before he breaks away to yell at Blaise one last time. Draco doesn't do that usually in public, and Harry doesn't even know what it was for, but he thinks he likes that, maybe. A little mystery with an inevitable happy ending. Just one more thing about Draco he can try to puzzle out. It's not until they're locking up for the night that it happens. Harry's locking up, eager to get home and see what Draco means to deliver on the speaking look he's been giving Harry all night, when a voice calls, "Mr. Malfoy, Mr. Potter." Draco turns, and Harry turns with him, a little girl with dark hair and skin the same color as Harry's, maybe 8 or 9, familiar for some reason that Harry can't quite put a finger on it. "Hello there," Draco says, smiling down at her. He glances at Harry and rolls his eyes, and then pointedly adds, "You're Delia Heatherby, aren't you? You were at the museum with the tour group, about a year ago." She's a little girl who'd been clinging to Draco's arm during the break-in, Harry realizes, startled. God, can't believe how bizarre it is to remember the way he thought of Draco then. His bemused, distant horror at Draco's rambling disclosure of slandering Harry to school children, which wouldn't surprise him in the slightest to hear today. The little "careful I bite" sign on the violent stair, and how even then he'd felt the faint echo of the fascinated entertainment that he'd come to feel looking at Draco. How confused he'd been to see this very girl clinging to Draco's arm as though he was someone who could protect her, someone she trusted. The irony of the last makes him grin a little. tuck the arm he isn't using to hold Tomato's leash through Draco's, even as little Delia says,
"Oh yes, that was me. Is the museum okay, Mr. Malfoy? I kept wanting to come back and see it, but my mum and dad said I couldn't on account of I had a traumatizing experience there last time. What if this time I died?"
That, Harry thinks Riley, explains the distant shapes of two adults running frantically up the sidewalk. "Ah," Draco says, throws Harry a look that's half amusement, half dismay before he says, "Well, it's fine as it happens, better than ever. Any further trauma inflicted on my guests, God willing, will be at the hands of history alone." Delia grins up at him. One of her front teeth is missing, Harry notices, and is charmed until she turns on him and adds,
"And you, Mr. Potter, have you broken your dangerous and destructive habit of creating chaos for chaos' sakes and inserting yourself where you do not belong?"
Harry says. He glares at Draco, who is making choked sounds of badly concealed laughter. The treacherous little snake. He won't be any help. He'll probably be howling about this until summer. "Well, sure, Delia. I've kicked the habit, changed my ways, and, such."
"Good,"
Delia says sternly.
"Mr. Malfoy said you were a drain on society."
And Draco loses his fight with laughter, just long enough to let out one supremely undignified shout of it. Delia's parents catch up to them then, panting and chiding her until they realize he's Harry Potter. Then they do that whole, the really uncomfortable, fawning thing, and Harry shifts on his feet for a second and nudges Tomato surreptitiously with his foot until he starts walking, calling, "Oh, sorry, what can you do, dogs, right?" as he follows. Draco comes along because his arm is still tucked into Harry's, and because he usually does one way or another. Takes him nearly half a block to stop laughing, but eventually he tucks himself a little closer against Harry's side, his breath coming even and calm. "So," he says, voice still lit up with amusement, "changed your ways, have you?" Harry looks at him sidelong. It's lit up in the glow of the street lamps, all the sharp angles of his face smoothed out with good humor, his mouth turned up in a familiar, well-loved smile. Pulling his arm out of Draco's grip, Harry wraps it around his shoulders instead, kissing him briefly but fiercely until the dog nearly wraps them both up in the leash and they break apart. "Well, you know," Harry says, "I think I have." Lets Draco lead the way home. The end. Thank you for listening to What We Pretend We Can't See by Gyzym, read by LMX This is the end of this book, and I tremendously enjoyed reading it. Thank you all for coming along for the journey. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I would be very happy to find you listening to the next novella or story I record, and you can find all of them basically on Spotify, YouTube, or AO3.